There's a game that came out this week. I think it came out like literally the day before we record this. Called Venba. Have either of you seen this? Sort of 2D animated art style game about
I
cooking.
saw you streaming it last night. I didn't check a lot of it out, but it looks interesting.
I won't say too much. This game is like somewhere between an hour and a half and 2 hours long, maybe two and a half if you take your time with it. Which I really appreciate a good, concise, experience that you can do in one sitting, and this is one that I think justifies being as short as it is. It is, uh, on the surface, it is a narrative heavy game about cooking and food and following recipes that is a puzzle game. I'll talk about how this wraps into the narrative in a minute, but on paper, the gameplay you're doing is you have a recipe book that is a little incomplete, it's a little worse for wear, there are some gaps and some bits that are a bit damaged, and you are trying to complete recipes to make meals, sort of working out what's missing in the gaps. It is a light puzzle that is not trying to prevent you from progressing through the game. It's not there to be a roadblock. It is there because the experimentation and sort of playing around trying to work out how you make these dishes is sort of a narrative theme. You are playing through the game as this woman called Venba. She and her husband moved from India to Canada in the late 80s. There is some implication that they sort of felt the need that they had to get away from India, and they're debating whether or not to move home to India because like Canada has not been great to them as a pair of immigrants in the late 80s. And then they find out they're going to have a kid, and they decide to stay in Canada to raise their kid there, going, I reckon that they're going to have a better quality of life.
Hmm.
But it becomes this story about trying to keep cultural practices alive when you are very separated from where you grew up. It is a story of food as a way of exploring heritage and relationships between people, and it makes really good use of cooking as a mechanic to sort of explore the experimentation that comes when you are trying to keep alive traditions that you don't have someone around to directly check things with. It is a really beautiful game. I don't want to get too much into where it goes from there, but the things I will say are that I got really emotional a few times playing it, and the best compliment I can give this game is that the moments that emotionally hit me weren't big, dramatic, we're trying to make you have an emotional reaction here moments. It was really, really subtle little details, things that the game just wasn't trying to draw my attention to, that you'd notice one little thing and suddenly get hit. And I think that is a really impressive thing to do with storytelling, to make subtle details that the game isn't drawing your attention to hit as hard as some narratives try and make their big dramatic moments. The soundtrack is absolutely fantastic. There is one aspect of the game that's maybe not going to be to everyone's tastes. I think it is a good choice, but I know when I was streaming it last night, some people didn't gel with it. And that is, this game does feature some pretty steep time jumps in places, where you will jump forward many years in a story without any explanation of what went on in the years between. I think that this game does a really good job of using little bits of environmental storytelling and those jumps forward in time to tell things without having to say them explicitly, and I think that those are some of the game's most interesting moments. I also think that by having big time jumps, it allows you to have expectations about what might or might not have changed, that the game can then play around with those expectations. And I think that is, again, one of the things that this game does really well. It is a beautiful story. It's maybe a couple of hours long. I think it's really worth playing. Don't go in expecting it to be constantly gameplay. The gameplay is there when there is a narrative moment that it is being used to help sell. A lot of it is a story is happening. And I think it is absolutely one of my favorite things I've played this year. I think it is a wonderful piece of storytelling that uses interactivity exactly as much as it needs to tell its story and no more. And I am incredibly glad I played it. I think it is a wonderful thing. I stopped multiple times to just sit and talk and take in what had happened through that story. It was very well done. I don't want to say anything more about it, but Venba is fantastic. Go check it out.